Now give our opening prayer, followed by a moment of silence, and then we'll begin the reading proper. God grant us understanding and patience, that justice, truth, and honesty may be evident in our decisions. Make us mindful of the needs of the people throughout the town of Oakville. Help us govern with the wider community in mind, and so create in us a desire for responsible action and progress. We ask this in your name. Amen. Everyone. This evening I'll begin by asking council if there are any declarations of community interest. You have the minutes of the previous council meetings from July 9th and August 7th before you. And I look for a disposition of the matter from Councilor Johnson moves, Councilor DeMont seconds. Declarations, discussion. Councilor, all in favor? Opposed, if any? And they are affirmed. We have no public presentations on tonight's agenda, but we do have delegations. And as I understand it, Mrs. Rockcliffe, who registered to delegate, has been detained, but her son is here. And Lane, are you still here?
I think it's a conversation with Councilor Duddy, who is going to ask the delegate on behalf of the Rockcliffe family.
Right, and that was my intention, was to offer you a chance to speak with both. So we'll skip over that one and come back. And Madam Clerk, would you call the next registered delegation?
The next delegation is Mr. Van Buren, given to item 4 of the Administrative Services Committee meeting and Regulations Standing Statement.
Is Mr. Van Buren here? Yes, sir.
Can I speak?
Well, can you tell us if he's here?
He's not here. I think there was some confusion when he signed in last Tuesday.
Okay.
I would replace him if that's okay with you.
Are you associated with him?
Yes, I am. I spoke last Tuesday as well. We both got confused as far as signing in the book. We thought it meant last Tuesday, not tonight. Our fault.
Well, come on down. It's going to be the kind of night on the delegation side anyway, so
Okay.
let's be loose on all fronts. Get loose for one and tight for others. So welcome, and Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you. Anyways, my name's Steve Williams. Some of you heard from me last week when I spoke on behalf of the teen tanning bill that you were considering. And tonight, I do know what the clock means up there. I'm sorry I didn't see it last week, so you had to cut me off. Tonight, I know what's going down. Anyways, I'm basically here just to speak for the record, to say that I am disappointed that Town Council is going ahead with this anti-tanning bylaw for people underneath the age of 18 without doing sufficient due diligence as far as making sure that all sides of both sides of the story were uncovered. And so that's basically what I wanted to say in respect to that for the record. I just would like to mention a couple of things, a couple of short statistics which were mentioned last week, and not being familiar with the process and not understanding there wouldn't be a chance for any rebuttal. When Joan from the Canadian Cancer Society spoke, she had mentioned several statistics that were done from an Ipsos Reid poll in respect to teens and tanning. One of those statistics indicated that 78% of the people who were polled disagreed with teens being allowed to tan. They felt they should be banned. It should be noted for councillors' information that on that particular poll, the question of parental consent was not there. When subsequent polls were done by CBC and other sources, when the question of parental consent was included, what happened was it switched. The parental consent went into the mid-60s, so it became unanimous. So I just wanted to point that out. Also, she had mentioned that the majority of teens that had come into tanning salons came in with their parents. The reason they came in with their parents is they were preparing for a trip down south so they would avoid sunburn. There's something that, believe it or not, the cancer societies, the melanoma societies, and the tanning industry all agree on. Sunburning is the problem. Now, if you were going down for a Mexican holiday, and it was, say, 4 days in the Bahamas or 7 days in Mexico, and you went directly into that Mexican sun without preparing your skin in any way or form, you're going directly from the freezer to the frying pan. That's like not stretching before you go skiing. That's like not stretching before you do any exercise. So what happens is, by using a tanning salon for 5 to 10 visits before they go, they get that gradual acclimatization, so it isn't a shock to the skin. And it's the shock to the skin that is clearly going to cause the sunburn, which is clearly, according to the Canadian Academy of Dermatology's website, according to Annette Sears Melanoma Network website, according to Canadian Cancer Society's website, that is the biggest problem associated with skin cancer. So what we do is we offer a method of reducing sunburn on tropical vacations. In that very same Ipsos Reid poll, 20% of the teens who had been polled had used tanning beds in the previous, I believe, 12 or 24 months. What had occurred is they had used it an average of 10 times each. That's not a lot at all, and the majority was prior to a Mexican holiday. So by bringing this ruling in at this point in time, what you're doing is you're really preventing people from being able to prepare for a trip down south. I know there are risks associated with indoor tanning. Statistically, the way that it's been presented through the use of relative risk as opposed to absolute risk makes the risk look much scarier. Those that were in attendance last week heard me speak about a certain survey that I had sent out, and it was the largest study ever done on indoor tanning. And it showed that your true risk, if you had used tanning salons, was 0.1% greater than somebody who hadn't. And that was a study done on 100,000 women, the largest study that's ever been done on it. So I'd just like to point out that those are just a couple of small samples of the type of information that could have been presented if there was an opportunity to do more due diligence. There's something else I'd like to say. We do live in an age of information and communication. It wasn't necessary to leave this to the last minute and just inform us via the Oakville Beaver that this was going through. If it hadn't been left to the last minute, we would have had a lot more opportunity to perhaps sit down and do an actual discussion on it, as Ralph Robinson had suggested, a roundtable discussion with all stakeholders involved. That would have made sense. We would have had an opportunity then to actually have shown you and discuss things with Joan and Annette and anybody else, all stakeholders involved, that tanning salons are not evil. We are not here to cause skin cancer. We are here to provide escapism, relaxation, as well as protection against sunlight, overexposure to sunlight on tropical holidays. So I'm not going to get into a lot more statistics this evening. There isn't time. This would take hours. I've got minutes. But there was one very important omission on this bylaw that I'd like to point out that I would ask that you consider. All tanning salons across Canada and North America have clients that are referred by doctors. They come in for acne, eczema, psoriasis, vitamin D deficiency, depression, all kinds of different disorders which are treated with UV light. And I believe that on your bylaw, it states that they would not be able to come into our salons anymore, even with a doctor's prescription. So I would ask that you take that under consideration. I think the bylaw read that you would only allow UV equipment solely for the purpose of medicinal purposes, but I didn't understand if that was clear, if it meant that a doctor could still prescribe somebody to my salon as they do now, or if they were to just not be allowed to. This would be a terrible inconvenience to these people because they're already suffering from various skin disorders, and indoor tanning helps, and they do come in under prescription. So I would hope that you would take that into consideration or make an amendment if you're going to pass this evening. Another thing that was mentioned the other evening is that you are very concerned that the province is not going to move ahead with this, which is one of the reasons why you felt that you had to move on this right away. Right now, in the tanning industry, August through December is the absolute slowest time of the year. This is when we have the fewest people coming into our salons. So if you were to suddenly have a change of heart and decide to change this bill signing date to January 15th and give the province till then to actually go ahead and finish doing all the due diligence that it's investing taxpayers' money in doing on this bill right now, the tanning industry wants this bill passed. The Canadian Cancer Society wants this bill passed. The only difference is the tanning industry wants it passed with parental consent and a lot of other rules and regulations that would give us more of a professional industry. So that's what I'm here to say this evening, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for the information. Councillor Elder, any questions?
Yes, thank you for coming tonight. But just missing the connection, what is your association with the tanning salon business?
Oh, my name is Steve, and I've been in the tanning business for 27 years. Yeah, last time we had 200 years of collective experience in the room. Tonight you only got 27, me. Been doing this for over half my life.
Okay, so you operate a tanning salon?
3 of them.
Okay, I wasn't sure whether you operate or whether you had teenagers that you wanted to get tanning.
Well, actually, you know, amazing part is everybody thinks teens are like crazy about tanning. My son just turned 18. And he's only been in a tanning bed for 8 minutes in his life. I can't kick him in there if his life depends on it. You know, the poor guy's probably vitamin D deficiency. He's got pimples on his nose that he complains about all the time, and a tanning bed would solve both those problems, and I can't get him in there. Huh? No, I think he's just a rebel. He doesn't want to listen to his dad, right? So, but...
My sister-in-law has a wonderful expression. TMI. We might have gone a little too far.
yeah, maybe.
Thank you very much for your information. Councillor Dillard.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. You mentioned at one point the whole rationale for the importance of having somebody come into your salon was to provide them, I guess, some sort of a base for going down south that would make it healthier for them, supposedly.
Preventing sunburn is a healthy activity, I would say, yes. That is the majority of our business and the majority of our teen business, as was clearly demonstrated by the Ipsos Reid poll that Joan from the Canadian Cancer Society referred to. That comes from their own statistics.
Okay, but would not sunscreen provide a similar protection rather than submitting themselves?
I've seen too many sunburnt people on Wasaga Beach on a long weekend to say that sunscreen actually works. And in our short meeting with Pam Damoff and Ralph and Tom Adams, Pam indicated that the problem with sunscreen, and I agree with her 100%, and there are many dermatologists, and you'll see this on TV all the time, that people are not using sunscreens properly. What happens is they wash off, they don't put enough on, they miss spots, it doesn't last, there's no consistency in SPFs. The FDA has not addressed this despite the fact that since 1978 they've been promising to address this in the United States. One company's 15 is another company's 5, one company's 5 is another company's 20.
Councillor Damoff.
I'd just like to clarify something since you've brought up my name, is that I agreed with you that people didn't...
God's helping me out.
didn't apply it properly,
Yes.
but I didn't mention any of the rest of that. And the
Okay.
solution for that would be to teach people how to apply the
Yeah,
sunscreen.
yeah. What-
Do you employ teenagers in your salon?
No, I don't.
And do tanning salons in Oakville employ teenagers?
I don't know exactly what other tanning salons do, but I imagine in the capacity of a bed cleaner, somebody who cleans beds in between clients, it's an ideal teen job. But I think most of them, as I explained last time, that you should be proud of the quality of the tanning salons that you have here in Oakville. Many of them are franchises or long-term owners such as myself, and we find that we get a much higher caliber employee if we look at for somebody in their 20s.
Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Steve, sorry, I don't know your last name.
Williams.
Mr. Williams, you said that some of the teens come to your establishment with a doctor's prescription. Why would they need to do that? Are they not entitled to come without a doctor's prescription?
They wouldn't have thought of coming into our salon if the doctor had not recommended them.
So do they get some sort of, is it covered under some sort of disability plan or some sort of medical coverage if they come in with a doctor's prescription?
Well, the nice thing about indoor tanning is it's relatively inexpensive fix for something like acne, eczema, or sunlight deficiency. The whole thing with tanning beds, just while we're on this topic, they were never invented to tan you. They were invented for people suffering from sunlight deficiency. They were invented by doctors. They're still coming into this.
Mr. Williams, my question to you was, do they get a discount if they come with a doctor's prescription, or is it covered by a medical plan?
And we don't give them a discount, and I wouldn't know if their medical plan covers it or not. We had a Ford employee once whose medical plan did cover their tanning, but I don't know as per on an individual basis what medical plans cover what.
You also challenged statistics that Ms. Gibbs provided when she said 78% people disagreed with teens polling, and you clarified that when there was parental consent, it was in the mid-60s, and then you said that's unanimous. Can you just clarify that? I'm not sure how mid-60s is unanimous.
Well, I did not come here this evening to, make my case entirely, because I know you've already unanimously voted last week that this is going down. So I did not bring.
I just want you to clarify a position. You said it's mid-65% was unanimous. I just want to make sure that was either you misspoke or I misheard.
In the mid-60s is unanimous out of 100, no matter what the other people vote. Okay? So if the other 35 voted that they should be banned, 65 is still unanimous. There were people in that poll who, as a matter of fact, feel that teens should be able to come in without parental consent. There are people that feel that they should be able to come in with parental consent, and there are those that feel that they shouldn't be able to come in at all.
Right. I'm not going to argue with you with your definition of unanimous, but you said that when teens were polled, most of them came in 10 times on the average for that year.
Yes.
And you followed that up and said that that's not a lot. There's a presumption that there is a number that is a lot. What would that number be?
Well, a number that would be a lot would be like 50 or 100 times. But the amazing thing is, when you start actually quantifying the amount of UV light that they're getting, and you compare that to what they'd get in outdoor exposure, you would find that it doesn't even come close to what somebody would get in the summer up north of the cottage.
And how many of these teens have you turned away from your establishment because they've been coming too much?
I've actually refused clients, but we have so few teen clients that I don't have that problem. That's the other perception, is there's a lot of teenagers tanning. There isn't. We're talking about less than 1%, hardly any, and the majority come in with their parents in the winter. There's never been a need to turn them away.
This bylaw wouldn't really affect your business because of...
Oh, absolutely not. No, there's no financial penalty here whatsoever. The penalty is the people who will not be able to prepare their skin for a trip down south and could suffer a major sunburn and potentially develop some form of deadly cancer down the road from the inability to do what nature had intended, which is gradual exposure to UV light.
Thank you very much for your answers.
Mr. Williams, you've elicited a lot of interest. Councillor Knoll has a question for you, and then Councillor Dudek.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, for your presentation. I want to clarify some comments you made with respect to the provincial legislation that has been tried a few times and is back before the legislature as a private member's bill. And you said there's a lot of due diligence and deliberations going on. What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, the perception via the misrepresentation in the press is that indoor tanning is bad. So it's very easy for somebody who does not possess the knowledge just to assume that it is bad.
No, you misunderstand my question. You referred
okay.
to the province.
Yes.
And you talked about the fact that we should wait for the province
The science.
to legislate it.
The
Right.
science.
But right now, my understanding is this is the third go as a private member's bill, and the chances of it succeeding as a private member's bill are limited, as are most private members' bills. But you're talking about the fact that there's due diligence going on and there's some work. Can you explain to me what you know about the due diligence that's going on by the ministry? Because I understand from questions we had last at committee that there is no specific ministry involvement in this issue right now.
All I can tell you is that we have been told through the province of Ontario that this should be sealed by the end of the year. They are tired of doing this over and over again. They would like to get it finished as much as we'd like to get it finished. And from what I've been told, it's going to happen.
And who told you this?
Our executive director, who handles the provincial matters. I don't do a lot at that level, so I can't really speak authoritatively on that. But I can tell you that the only reason that the private member bills didn't make it through in the past was due to an election and twice due to prorogue. This time, we want it done, they want it done, everybody wants it done. Everybody's tired of talking about this.
Are you familiar how often private members' bills become law?
Actually, no, I don't keep statistics on that.
Yeah,
I'm sure that would be more your field, just like tanning is my field.
Yeah, probably better to put my odds on a lottery ticket. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Duddick.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. Just so I can be absolutely clear what was discussed when Councillor Khan was inquiring. You mentioned something about 1% of your business is teenage, is that correct?
In my particular salon. Some salons might be a little bit higher, but overall, the percentage is very low. Even Dr. Sam, I'm sorry, I can't remember his last name, who spoke last week as well, he only spoke for a few minutes, but there's one thing he did say. He did say that if tanning salons are going to take a financial penalty over this, then we have a bigger problem than we thought we have. So even your own dermatologist that spoke here last week feels it's a very small number of teens, by his words, stating that he would think that if we were suffering financial penalty, which we're not, that he has a bigger problem than he thinks he has. So therefore, I would default his answer, your own dermatologist, to think that it is a small problem.
Councillor Grant.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. I guess I'm not really getting what the concern is then, because you say that the provincial regulation is going to be a done deal, pretty much.
The provincial regulation potentially will involve parental consent. Yours doesn't. So what is of concern is that Oakville is denied the ability to protect their teenagers via pre-tanning on a tropical holiday or just tanning for relaxation, whereas the rest of the province can. We're just looking for consistency. That's why we're asking you to wait.
Many years ago, we came up with a pesticide bylaw that was eventually adopted in some ways by the province, and most of their decisions supersede anything that we can come up with. So I don't see the harm in Oakville preparing ourselves with the bylaw right now to cover that time period, which, as you say, is probably a slower time period until the province steps up and does something.
Well, let me tell you, I love your pesticide law. I love your smoking law. And I like your new motorcycle noise law, too. I love living in Oakville. I think it's a great town. But I think that with the fact that we've got our slow season coming up, we've got a minimal number of people tanning right now, that you can afford to wait.
Belt and suspenders, but thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for being, we have second, we're having seconds over here. Councillor Khan.
Thank you. I was just, Mr. Williams, have you read the actual bylaw and the definition of tanning equipment?
I saw it briefly last week, and I wasn't quite sure what that meant, and so that's why I just brought it up to you this evening. I didn't know. I just read what you had on your website, that there wasn't very much there, and it said you started this process back on April 16th. And
the reason I ask is you seem to be very concerned about people who might be wanting to use tanning beds based on prescription or for therapeutic reasons. And do you appreciate that the definition of tanning bed does not include beds that are used for therapeutic purposes solely?
Does that mean that under your current wording of the bylaw, they would still be okay underneath a doctor's prescription?
From the definition that I read, and I would actually defer this to our council, but it means that they're used solely for therapeutic purposes. Yours are not used solely for therapeutic purposes.
No, they're not. So, but when referred by a doctor, then it becomes used for a therapeutic purposes, a medical purpose. So what I'm saying to you is there is a dual purpose available here. There are benefits to moderate exposure to sunlight.
The definition addresses your concern
Okay.
about
Okay.
about teenagers using it for therapeutic purposes.
All right, well, thank you.
Where that bed is used solely for therapeutic purposes.
Yes, so that's okay then. Yeah, all right, good. I'm glad you covered that. I really appreciate that, and I will make sure that anybody that comes in for that, I'll put a plug in for town council to tell them that they thought of them. No? You don't want the credit for doing something good?
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
I want to thank you for bringing your information. I found it a very valuable discussion, and I appreciate the time and the information that you gave us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and once again, I'm proud to live in Oakville, and have yourselves a great evening.
Okay, we're glad to have you. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
The next delegation is Ms. Joan Gibb, here from the Canadian Cancer Society, Ontario Division, regarding item 4 of Administrative Services Committee and the tanning equipment.
Welcome, Ms. Gibb. Council looks forward to your information. You have up to 10 minutes.
Good evening, Your Worship and councillors. Obviously, there's been a little bit of refuting on what Joan said from the Cancer Society. Ipsos Reid did, actually, that study was for everybody, not just youth. And I'd like to bring Mr. Stevens back in, that we're talking about the bylaw for youth under 18. So in generalities, at the last meeting, I didn't hear youth mentioned with regards to his equipment and his presentations. So anyway, I do have information from the Canadian Cancer Society, Ipsos Reid, and this one was this year in April, and it was because we knew that we would be reapproaching the provincial government, which we did. There were 55 of me, volunteers that is, from Public Issues for this tanning issue again, and this was our third time in 4 years, and we were part of the bylaw that the provinces, once again, private members bylaw, that in good faith that they are asking their members to vote on this. Now, when we were there, it's very difficult. You have to be objective that the orange issue and the e-health and all the other issues that are involved seem to take precedent. And as Councillor Knoll asked me what I thought on Wednesday night, you know, how did I perceive this? It wasn't any different than it was 3 years ago, that I could see whether there were chances it was going to be passed or not. So anyway, I'd like to talk about the youth and the Ipsos Reid, because we knew we were going to Queen's Park again. We asked them to do a commission on 12 to 17-year-olds at tanning stations and using tanning beds. And 52% said yes, they do. Now, we didn't have the numbers, whether it was 10 or 50 times a year. But what they said was they come with their parents, and they were introduced to tanning beds because they were going down south, that's true, and that their parents bring them and pay for them. So our whole issue is, once again, with youth, they do not have the expertise and the thicker skin, if you will, and the tan skin and the leathery skin when they're under 18 as they do when they're 30. So we're asking you to help us, urge you to help pass the bylaw, because we've left it for the parental guidance, and look what's happened, is just as he said, you know, they come in and they come in with their parents and so on. So I'd like to clarify that's why I'm here, not for tanning beds in general. We definitely, on behalf of the Canadian Cancer Society, whether it's a national division, unit, region, we aren't asking to ban tanning beds for people. We should have the ability to know better. Now, my urge, and on behalf of the society, our unit, we're thanking the councils. The councils, actually the Oakville councils, who have helped us pass the non-smoking bylaw and the pesticide And we're urging you at this stage as well, because you've shown leadership in the past. We respected that, and it does up to the national level. So because I gave quite a bit of information, my one thing I'd like to, if I can, refer back to Councillor Bird, who said, Joan, do you really know that you mean that there isn't a register, that the province doesn't know where this tanning equipment is? And there isn't a register, and no, we don't know where they are, where they're located. So there's a lot of things that can go on there.
That's it? Thank you, Ms. Gibb, for your information. Councillor DeMoff has a question for you.
Oh, all right.
Two quick questions, actually, Joan. Thank you for coming, and thank you for all your advocacy work on this over the years. The private members bill that's before the provincial legislature right now, it's from a NDP MPP.
Yes, Francis.
Is it to require parental consent, or is it to restrict tanning bed use by youth?
No, I interpreted it as both. Like they want to...
her bill is to restrict use by young people, is it not?
Yes, the way we presented it, and actually it was our society that had to put on the agenda again in that way as well.
My other question is, I know the Canadian Cancer Society, my mic is really loud tonight.
It is.
The Canadian Cancer Society has an ad campaign to discourage young people from using tanning beds before the prom, which has nothing to do with going down south. Why do you run that ad campaign?
We run it because the misconception, just it was mentioned tonight, that's the only time that they use tanning beds, and that's not true. They start early for whatever party's going on wherever they're going. There's so many parties nowadays. So, no, that's a misconception.
Councillor Elder.
Ms. Gibb, nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Question regarding the Ontario bill versus the Newfoundland bill, which is the NDP is supposedly using the same legislation they have in Newfoundland, and it's under 19 in Newfoundland where they have instilled the tanning ban.
Yes.
Why are we going for under 18 instead of under 19?
Before, that's what we had. That was our presentation from the Canadian Cancer Society. We've always said under 18. And so whether that was one out, I don't know. I can't answer that question.
Thank you.
That was our recommendation from the Cancer Society.
Thank you, Councillor. Ms. Gibbs, I wonder if you could help us with does the society have any information or a position, I guess I should ask, on this question of using a tanning bed to prepare yourself to go down south? Does the society have a view that that's helpful or harmful, or
no?
To leave aside the prom question, is there an official position from the Canadian Society on this on the issue of using it for a beginner tan or a starter tan?
Yeah, Your Worship, the reason why we don't, number one, we don't have a register where they are. We don't know how they're being reinforced with regards to students going in. To say that, okay, you've been out in the sun. We've had weather in March, that's what, 30 degrees. So I don't know how you can tell. Okay, they're not ready yet. They should go to the tanning salon. So because it's very untangible, that we don't know the skin complexions, we have no idea of where they've been. They might have been to who knows where, Mexico for a wedding with a family prior to that. There's too many variables that we haven't. The answer is no.
Okay, so there's no position on that. Thank you. Is the society's position that any use is harmful, or only that improper use or overuse produce harm?
Good question, because that's the whole thing about the enforcement, the register, having the signage up with warnings before you go in, the advertising of, what is your skin type? Are you using? By the time they get to be old enough, their parents should know that, by the way, that they tan easy. So I know it's too much gray matter still.
No, I'm asking, does the society, the Cancer Society, have a position, an official position on the point? Is it does the society take the view that any use is harmful, or does the society take the view that improper use or overuse is where the harm arises? Which is it?
Our concern from the World Health Organization, from our representative 2 years ago, was both. It was skin texture, it was age, it was genetics, it was all of the above. So the statement was with youth, and this is what started the under 18, at least with us 4 years ago. So no, you won't see that terminology, that it depends on your genetics, it depends on your skin type, whatever. So you won't see that description written down.
So I won't find a statement by the society that all use or any use is harmful. It's more nuanced, if I'm hearing you correctly. It goes to genetics and skin type and other exposure. Is that correct?
Yes, because we do respect adults and intelligence, and that we can't dictate to them that they're not supposed to do that. We wouldn't be able to. We're making the awareness like we normally do, education, et cetera. So making them aware of the skin and whatever's involved with babies.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful to me. I appreciate those answers. Councillor Bird?
Thank you, Joan. I, like some of the others here, are trying to balance the alleged health benefits versus the health risks. That's what we're into, but and also the argument of consistency. Now, I understand Nova Scotia is the only province that actually has a bylaw.
True. 2
And
years.
what is the age that they have used? We've heard Nova
I
Scotia.
don't know. I'm
Could
sorry, I
we-
don't know.
Is it 19
Sorry, I
or
don't
18?
know. I know that we don't have enough facts yet. I
Right.
tried to get some for
But,
tonight.
you know, and the argument of consistency, and I realize the previous delegation has his hand up to have the answer, but it strikes me at least we could start there. If other provinces or jurisdictions or orders of government are suggesting that there's a benchmark at age of 19 where you should use as the starting point for this additional responsibility of tanning your skin, then I don't see why that shouldn't be the same thing in our bylaw, rather the confusion 18 in one province. But was there any discussion with that with the province? What is your position that you're asking the province of Ontario to follow?
Yes, I didn't get the information back on that because I wanted more information from Nova Scotia, i.e. has there been
Right.
any results with regards to lowering of melanoma? But it's been only, I don't
Right.
know what part of 2010 it was, so we've had
Well-
a year and a half maybe. So I
Well-
couldn't get that information.
that'd
But
be
the
a-
age group was Brazil. Brazil I think they've abandoned tanning beds, period, for cosmetic reasons.
We're not going, I'm just talking we seem to be stuck on the starting age of when you need parental authority to enter into the treatments one way or the other, and that's the one that I think we can start being consistent on that.
Okay.
And
All
that's
right.
the easiest one to fix, as I see it. That's
Okay.
going from 17 to 19 or 18, but picking a number. But that's my question, and thank you very much.
Yeah,
for
that's a good
providing-
question, and because there is a difference between, in many cases, 17 and 19-year-olds.
Okay.
But 18 was right in the middle,
Well, I would
but
rather,
it's a good place to
as I
start.
say, if Nova Scotia passed the bylaw, it is in place. I
And the
can't
only one.
see why we can't use that one until we find something different.
Okay?
I have two more councillors, Councillor Duddeck and Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Joan, again, for coming forward and for all your advocacy work on this issue. The one question I would be interested to hear from you is in regards to the Canadian Cancer Society, what work they do from an educational aspect in terms of administering sunscreen and what type of sunscreen. Do they do some educational work in that regard, seeing as that obviously was alluded to that we don't know how to use it?
Yes, and we use mainly women's magazines. We do more, where it's more affected through women's magazines and teens magazines than it is anywhere else. And with a lack of publicity budget at the moment, I would like to see it right beginning in January, you know, before they go. But that's very true. Councillor DeMoff was correct in that. Once again, folks, I go back to parenting. you know, with teaching, and we would like to be able to tell everybody and do whatever, but it just doesn't work. So, you know, that's just a confession, but that could be worked on better, publicity. But again, the cheapest way seems to be, and we don't have any money at the Cancer Society for publicity, so.
That brings us to Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Joan, for your presentation and for your tireless efforts on behalf of the Cancer Society and society in general on this issue. I just want to bring some clarity to a couple points. Councillor DeMoffat asked you a question. I don't think we got the clarity, so I just want to be sure that we all understand the same thing. Bill 74, which is the Skin Cancer Prevention Act, which was reintroduced in 2012, does not provide an option for parental consent. Are you aware of that?
No.
Okay, but that's the fact, so I had to ask you a question to get on the record. My question is this, so you're involved with the Canadian Cancer Society, and the Canadian Cancer Society obviously spends a lot of time at Queen's Park and spends a lot of time advocating for their various positions. So you'd be aware if, in fact, there was any kind of pending legislation, any kind of significant work being done by the actual government on this particular issue, would you not?
Would like to give a political answer.
I don't need a political answer.
I actually liaison with our member of provincial parliament, Kevin Flynn.
Right.
I've spent at least 4 to 5 times a year on this topic with him, and never once have I that it's been mentioned anything to me, or could I find that out? Our CEO couldn't find that out.
But there's with your best efforts, you have no knowledge that there's any kind of government action being taken on this issue at Queen's Park today.
Not at Queen's Park.
Okay.
No, not at all.
So the Bill 74 which is a private member's bill introduced by a non-government member of the legislature, is the only action happening at Queen's Park right now.
Yes.
And does the Cancer Society have any hope that that bill is going to actually become law?
No.
Why do you believe that?
When we approached, as I said, there were at least out of 55 of us, there were 15 of us who had been senior volunteers. And we had our opportunity to speak with the MPP, we meet with the MPP, we're on the agenda, we're right in Queen's Park. And no one is going to say, I just heard rumble that it wasn't going to be, it'll be last on the agenda. And that was, I won't say who said that.
Which is uncommon for private members.
Well, it isn't. And again, you're absolutely correct. I'm not being biased, because this has been a long haul. And
this has transcended governments.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. There is one private hope. There's one little hope of a private member's bill for the federal government by MP Bizan from Manitoba, and it's receiving second reading, and that's sometime in the fall. But I don't have any hope for that either.
Okay, so the suggestion that we should not act because there's imminent legislation coming from the province is simply not valuable advice. Would that be a fair statement?
No, and the track record indicates that from the last 4.5 years and 2 other bylaws.
So if we don't act, and there will be, in your estimation, if we don't act today, there will be no law or any kind of regulation in this regard in the foreseeable future.
And there could be another election provincially, so there goes the other one.
Right.
We'll be on 4. So I agree that perhaps if you passed it, we'd at least get it going and whatever.
And we've had some history of leading on these issues before.
Yes.
Thank you, Joan.
Definitely.
Councillor Khan and Councillor DeMoff.
Thank you, Joan. I too personally want to thank you for all the work that you do. I just want to clarify something that you said, and I think it's an important distinction. You said that you don't agree with a complete ban on tanning beds because you believe that as adults they can make educated decisions. Your arguments appear to be based on making an intelligent decision versus vulnerability. I've read reports, I actually read reports today, and I want to know if your society endorses this. It's not just a matter of informed consent, but reports show that early exposure to UV lights are directly correlated with a higher chance of melanoma later in their years.
Yes, and 75%, those using tanning beds up to 35 years old, from 0 have a 75% chance of getting melanoma. True.
Right, so it's two issues. One is having informed consent after the age of 18 or 19 or whatever that may be, and increased vulnerability at a younger age.
Yes.
The other thing is, I just want to clarify, and Councillor Noel was talking about this today. We talked about Nova Scotia, we talked about the Newfoundland bill, we talked about what might happen with the private members bill, whether or not that will come to fruition. You don't really care about any of that. You want us to pass this bylaw and hope that other municipalities will follow suit.
I'm sure they will. Let's go back to the non-smoking bylaw. Look how we forced it, and I agree with you. We sent it the other way, and that actually stands out. Very rarely in my 40-some years as a volunteer have I received a note from the National Office of the Canadian Cancer Society and Ontario Division, thanks to the leadership of Oakville and the previous mayor and councillors for the leadership you've shown, and we've made a difference with the province. And I'm passionate about that as an Oakvillian.
Thank you very much, and I think that also Mayor Burton deserves a lot of credit on those fronts.
Councillor Demoff.
Because Joan doesn't have the benefit of the internet where she is, would you indulge me to read the Canadian Cancer Society's position from their website on, you were asking about that.
If you can make it a question, it'd be easier to indulge.
So Joan, if I read this to you, would you
Yes.
agree with the statement that on the Canadian Cancer Society's website, to reduce your risk of getting skin cancer, do not use artificial tanning equipment such as tanning beds or sun lamps? Because indoor tanning is especially harmful to young people, the Canadian Cancer Society believes that people under the age of 18 should not be allowed by law to use indoor tanning equipment. Indoor tanning advertising aimed at people under the age of 18 should be banned. And then it goes on with another number of other points. But would you agree that that is the position of the Canadian Cancer Society?
Yes, and the key words are under the age of 18, because I didn't want to imply to Mr. Stevens or anyone here that it is a free society and adults should have the intelligence to know whether to use it or not. So yes, I will agree with that. Thank you. There you go. 2 answers. You're welcome.
Next delegation is Ms. Annette Sear, here as chair of the Melanoma Network of Canada on the same issue, item 4 of admin services.
Welcome, Ms. Sear. Council looks forward to your information. You have up to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, councillors. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak once again. As I live and breathe, I'm dealing with melanoma. I think many of you have been aware from several meetings that we have had that it's my 12th year dealing with melanoma. I just had surgery again, actually an exact month ago, for metastatic melanoma, and so I think I can speak fairly consciously on this. I'm also the founder of the national organization Melanoma Network of Canada that deals continuously with patients across the country, as well as dealing at a national and provincial and municipal level on issues dealing with all forms of skin cancer and particularly melanoma. Not a day goes by that I don't get a call from a medical professional or from a patient to talk about issues concerning this dreadful disease. Just in, I guess, response to some of the issues that were raised tonight, and I do hope you'll ask me a lot of questions, because I said I've been living and breathing this for 12 years, and I feel very strongly that I have a very sound foundation in this disease and some of the causal factors that contribute to it. But all in all, we have to recognize that any form of a tan is fundamentally damage to the skin. There is no doubt about that. Every medical society, professional medical agency in this country will tell you without a doubt that tanning is damage, clear and central to the skin. During a tanning session and such, you continue to damage the skin, and sometimes at increased rates of radiation, up to 5 times the level that you will find outside in normal sunlight. We also have to distinguish between normal sunlight, commercial use of tanning beds, and then medical use of tanning beds that are supervised in a professional forum with different levels of radiation that are used in the commercial tanning beds and at the tanning salons. There is a big difference. So we don't want to debate that medical point of view, but very few of those are used nowadays. In fact, they found patients with psoriasis develop a high rate of melanoma and skin cancers, which I'm sure you would not want to develop if you're a psoriasis patient and compound it with a melanoma, which may in fact cost your life. So, just to be clear on that fact. As Mr. Williams has indicated, this isn't about affecting his business, but it is about sending a message. And I think we clearly have to send messages and protect our youth whenever possible, but also it sends a message to adults that neither we should be using tanning salons overall. I'd love to see a ban widely on that, but I know realistically we're looking at protecting our youth, and that's certainly what the majority of countries in the world that have had such tanning legislation have implemented. It's quite widespread in Europe. It's certainly Australia, New Zealand, Brazil, US states. This is not something new. I wish it was, that we were on top of this and leaders. We will be leaders in this province, absolutely. And we will certainly be leaders in hopefully instilling upon the province the need for such a widespread tanning legislation. I have to say that it is lucky 13 today. Lucky 13 because there's at least 13 public health units that have contacted me as of today asking for support in how they can move forward with such bylaws within their own areas. So I applaud their efforts, and I have committed to help them move this forward. We are also working with the municipality of Mississauga, and they hope to have a public consultation. They don't work over the summer apparently on these things, so I really applaud you for taking that extra effort and working over the summer on these issues. And I really have felt that their council has supported us fully and in moving this forward, so I'm very pleased with that as well. And at the provincial level, last week on Wednesday, I happened to meet in the Minister of Health's office to discuss a number of issues concerning melanoma, including access to medications and treatments, which are very rare for our disease, but also to speak to them specifically about this tanning bed issue and to find out if, in fact, there is any agenda or any work being done currently on this at the provincial level, and was told, no, that's not the case. It is not on the agenda. It is not being under study at the moment. So I can pretty clearly say to you without any reservation that that is not going to happen. So the stalling tactics that are being presented forward to you by the Tanning Association is merely that. And the longer we wait to implement legislation that will protect youth from future issues, potentially developing melanoma or other forms of skin cancer, which are very disfiguring, we potentially leave people to die. And certainly cost them years of productive life. So I would like to end with that and saying, I commend you once again as a citizen of Oakville and this country. I commend you for your efforts. I think once again the leadership demonstrated by your worship and also the committee and the rest of the councillors here is really going to set a nice precedent for the province, and I'm sure you're going to see other actions taken as a result of your supporting this bylaw tonight. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. Sear. There's questions for you from Councillor Adams, and Councillor Elgar, Councillor Adams, and Councillor Khan, and Councillor Demoff. Or in other words, you got your wish.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Sear, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Just a little bit of background. Were you a frequent user of tanning beds as a teenager yourself?
For shame, for shame. Actually, I was one of those teenagers, and I probably, look a little beyond my teenage years, but I was one of those teenagers, in the 70s and 80s that tried to keep up with the rest of the tanning crowd. There's a lot of peer pressure when you're young and everybody else is tanned and you're, as white as a ghost and scaring people because of it, I got teased immensely because how white I was. And tanning beds were introduced, if I recall, in my area, and this was out in the West when I was out there, around the early 80s and such. And it was again, put forward as something to prepare yourself for holidays or get that safe base tan because you're indoors in a controlled environment. I burnt to a crisp. 3 minutes in the tanning bed, burnt to a crisp. Honestly, no supervision, nobody monitoring, but 3 minutes and I was already fried. So I wasn't comfortable in them, but I have to say I was in them approximately 6 times over the years. And again, heading off to Cuba thinking I could get a good base tan. Well, I don't tan. I'm one of those skin types that it shouldn't be tanning and never should have been in a tanning bed. Do I attribute my current disease to that? Who knows? All I know is the statistics show a significant increased risk even from the use of one tanning bed session. So, if I can attribute that to the time I spent, maybe so. I know since then I haven't spent a significant amount of time because I think by my 20s I kind of maybe developed a few more brain cells that sort of woke me up and said, this isn't going to happen and it's too painful an experience to really continue on. So I stopped really any form of tanning and used sunscreen and probably, maybe extended my life a little bit longer than now. But, I wish I could go back like Dear 16-Year-Old Me video and say, don't do it, stay out of it.
Mr. Williams, he was saying that the real reason for the tanning is so that, which is exactly what you were saying the opposite was, but to get the pre-tan so you don't get a severe sunburn when you go south. You don't buy that?
I don't buy it, and neither does the medical community. A tan in itself provides approximately 3 SPF, a sun protection factor of 3. So if you notice that most suntan lotions or sunscreens have about a 15 or up from there. You see 15, 30s and such. So a 3 is nothing. A t-shirt provides you with 7 to 8 SPF. So a pre-tan is a myth, and the Canadian Cancer Society also has a very clear position on that. Many of those points go further than just the no tan. It's having proper labeling and signage and such, but also says that very clearly there is no such thing as a safe tan, and this is a myth that has been perpetuated by the industry to sell you on needed tans before you go down to the sunny south. So if you have a tan from a tanning salon or an outdoors and such, you are still susceptible to burning. Even people with, let's say a very dark-skinned person from, may have been, born in Africa, or any of those dark-skinned persons can still burn. And I had a lady recently come up to me who is, African-American, and she said, really have to tell people that you can still burn even if you've got dark skin. And I said, well, absolutely. They have a decreased propensity to burn because of the nature of the coloring in their skin, but there's still quite a possibility of developing skin cancer and melanoma and burning.
Final question.
Yes.
Whereabouts do you stand on the age? Like Nova Scotia, it is 19. And I noticed Newfoundland right now is looking at 19. They haven't, it's not implemented yet, but others are looking at 19 instead of 18.
Yeah, I mean, if I was true to my heart, it would be everybody. But 19 is a great age. People have taken the saw-off point, I think, more around the voting, the age of majority. And so 19, 18 has been sort of batted back and forth. It's under 19 in Nova Scotia currently. BC's looking at under 18, and they're just about, they will have passed their legislation by this fall. It will have been given assent by the fall. So it varies, and I think the thing is we want to send a message, and we want to send a message tonight, and I'd rather not see it be upheld. If you want to increase the age and the whole committee or the whole council decides to put it at under 19, or I'd be thrilled. But it's really up to you, your staff, to be able to determine what's the appropriate level. But I'm fully supportive of the bylaw being moved forward as it is.
I'd like to thank you for coming and speaking tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you for joining us again. You've been following us the whole way through. You touched on the medical use issue, but only very briefly.
Yes.
Could you expand on your knowledge of how it might be used in a medical setting, and if there are any differences in terms of the technology that's used, and what is prescribed and what it's prescribed for?
I'd love to be able to answer that.
And the last piece of it, if you're going on through that, is Do you think we've appropriately managed that?
I'd love to be able to answer that fully for you, Councillor Adams, but I don't feel qualified to do that. I think you really would need either one of the dermatologists or the medical radiation oncology people to speak to that issue. I'd have to leave that up to your staff to have done their research on that. There's not that many referrals for this type of therapy, and oftentimes that's a misguided perception of treatment of acne. I've never known a cure for acne to be a tanning bed. I don't think that that's appropriate at the best of times, and I doubt you'd see a medical professional that would agree with that at any point in time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Khan?
Actually, Councillor Adams took my thunder away. I was going to also ask you about the therapeutic purpose. But since I do have the floor, you did mention something about your lucky 13. And if you look around, you'll see that we have no regrets today. We have a council of 13. And so there might be some correlation. On that note, Your Honour, at the appropriate time, I'd ask for a recorded vote.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillor DeMoff?
I was also born on Friday the 13th.
Oh, is that right?
If any of my colleagues have not seen that Dear 16-Year-Old Me, Google it on YouTube. It's a very powerful video that the Cancer Society has done about melanoma. Is it?
It's actually the David Cornfield Fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on the WHO study that's referred to and what was in that and what it said about tanning bed use specifically to do with youth?
Well, basically, the World Health Organization in 2009 came out with a reclassification of tanning beds in with the same type of known carcinogens as mustard gas, asbestos, etc. So it's certainly of concern to us. They also talked about in the study about the increased risk of tanning in the youth, and particularly people from the ages of I think it was 15 to 30, somewhere in that group, being more vulnerable because of skin type, because of development, etc. So, and they had done a summary of a number of studies to come up with those numbers. I wouldn't specifically be able to quote it without my notes, in hand and such. But, the World Health Organization had recommended that there be legislation in place to restrict the use of tanning beds for youth. And I think that was pretty clear and really got some support. And there's been subsequent studies since then. There's been some really excellent work out there, and I'd be pleased to send it to you after if you really continue to be interested in that as well.
And I'd like to thank you as well for bringing this to us and all of your work that you do. And
Thank you.
Was there anything that you did want to share with us that you haven't already?
No, I think, again, you have my support, and I wanted to thank both you and Councillor Robinson for having the courage and the faith to bring this forward. It's not easy sometimes. I think there's an old proverb that says, "Behold the turtle who does not make progress unless he sticks his neck out." And I think sometimes, we have to, when we know that something needs to be changed, we have to take action and do that. And I'm glad that you've done that.
Councillor Dudek?
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. You mentioned recently meeting with, I believe it was the Minister of Health, is that correct?
Actually, it was one of the senior advisors, John Fears.
Okay. You indicated that the response you had to inquiring as to when this was going to be coming forward as an issue, and there was a response that it was not in the immediate horizon. Did they give you an indication as to why that was the case, or an indication as to if and when it may be coming forward?
No, they did not. And it's, I'm not sure. I wouldn't want to put him on the spot and such because of that. But really all he could say is it's not on the agenda for the fall. They've got a full agenda already, and so they won't be tackling this issue.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Councillor Dudek. Councillor Robinson?
Your Worship, I don't have any questions for Ms. Sear, but I have some comments I'd like to make at the appropriate time.
Well, please don't have any worry that you won't get a chance to do that. Ms. Sayre, thank you very much for your time and your information. Council appreciates it. All right, our next and last registered delegation is on behalf of Beverly Rockcliffe, her son Blaine. Mr. Rockcliffe, have you been able to discuss your mother's preference for option 1?
Thank you. I did speak to her. She was hoping to get it deferred for one more cycle, if that's possible.
Not going to happen.
Okay.
But it's too expensive to hold all that up.
Right.
If she would prefer option 1 instead of option 4,
Yeah.
which was a choice she was given at the meeting last week, we're happy to open the matter up and substitute option 1 for option 4. But I don't believe that council is going to hold the matter up any longer.
Okay. I did just want to say that she was stuck in traffic, and she did want to be here very much, but due to contrary belief that this isn't what she does around the clock, so she was in another place, and she did really want to be here tonight to speak.
So on the matter of 1 or 4, you got no advice?
Just kind of, sorry. 1 I think would be preferable, but yeah.
We just need to hear it from a Rockcliffe
Okay.
who says he spoke to his mom.
Yeah, exactly. I have permission from my mom for number 1, yeah.
Thank you
So,
very much.
Okay.
Appreciate you coming in and subbing for her.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Duddick?
Your worship, staff have provided some wording that might be of some assistance to Mr. Rockcliffe in regards to what his mother had indicated, and that would be that the report entitled Dunn Street Curbing from the Engineering Construction Department dated July 16, 2012 be received, and that staff implement option 1 identified in the staff report dated July 16, 2012 from the Engineering and Construction Department, with the understanding that staff can work with the abutting property owner in an effort to enhance grading opportunities behind the curb, subject to the satisfaction of the Director of Engineering and Construction. I think that would address your concern regarding the draining, and that through your worship, maybe we could get some clarification. That would mean that the landscaping would stay as is. It would just be the grading issue that we'd be dealing in back of the curb. Is that not correct?
Yes, Councillor. That was the information that staff provided us at committee. So for the benefit of the public, we're talking about an encroachment on town land, and one option regrades the town land and necessitates the removal of the gardens, and the other option works to leave the gardens on the encroached area and grades it slightly differently. So, otherwise I fear that many members of the public might be quite mystified by what we're talking about.
Okay, at the appropriate time, I'll raise this through the community services.
No problem. Thank you very much, Mr. Rockcliffe.
Okay, thank you, Worship. Thank you, Members of Council.
All right, Council, that brings us to the very committee reports that we're talking about. Community Services Committee and Administrative Services Committee, August 8th, both. Councillor Duddick?
I'd like to separate item 2, please. Community services.
Okay. Any other separations? All right. Then in that case, can I get a mover and seconder for the balance? Councillor Duddick moves. Councillor Giddings seconds. All in favor? Opposed? I believe that the motion, as we have received it from Councillor Duddick, seconded by Councillor Giddings, includes and the confidential report of the Community Services Committee. Is that correct? And thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Did I call the vote? I did. That carried. Councillor Demoff. Oh, and I beg your pardon. I did promise him that he could make that you both could make speeches at this point. And perhaps I erred. I should have done it a second ago, but this is as good a time as any. Have you guys decided who wants to go first? Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. A few points of clarification first would be that at no time did I tell anybody that I was recommending a roundtable discussion with all stakeholders. What I probably said was when our good councillor friend Tom Adams, Pam Demoff, and I met with Mr. Williams and his organized leader from British Columbia a couple of weeks ago to discuss this, I probably classified the ASC meeting of last Wednesday night as being a discussion amongst all stakeholders. And that was already agreed to by the procedure that we follow here in this council. It was not a recommendation of mine, although I supported it. But again, I want to make it clear that at no time did I say we need to have a roundtable discussion. I'd like to just bring forward another clarifying point. When Annette and I first met and talked about this, we talked about 19 and under. But then subsequently, when the committee that became created with Pam and Annette and myself, we met with the clerk's department and we amended the under 19 to under 18. And I think that was done following the guidelines of the provinces that are out there now with that forthcoming and pending legislation. Now, on a lighter note, yes, I was a victim of peer pressure myself, because I was walking around on a beach one time in Florida, and due to my shape and my color, this elderly gentleman looked at me and said, "You look like a vanilla ice cream cone." I started going to tanning parlors after that. Subsequent to that, a well-known dermatologist in Oakville, Dr. Sapra, told me to stop going to suntan parlors. And you know, I'm going to tell you, there's nothing more crucial or critical or condemning than your doctor looking at you in the eye and saying, "You've got cancer." Well, I've been told that twice. And we survive these things, but we must put ourselves in a position tonight of doing something about it to make it easier to survive them. Now, I'd like to thank many that became so involved in this process. Annette Sear, whom you have met 2 or 3 times, the chair of the Melanoma Society of Canada, telephoned me a couple of months ago now, I guess, Annette probably, and said she'd like to talk to me about this issue. So I went to her house and spent 2 hours talking to her. Subsequent to that, I approached Councillor Pam Demoff, knowing of her interest in cancer and the fact that she's chair of the Terry Fox Run in Oakville. We had a subsequent meeting, and as I mentioned already, our good friend, Councillor Tom Adams, joined us as well, so he became substantially a good part of the work that's been happening on this through to this particular time of the evening. Joan Gibb, everybody loves Joan, everybody appreciates Joan, and Joan, we continue to recognize what you are doing for this community with the fire putting out business of cancer. Keep it going. You're doing a wonderful job. Dr. Sam Hanna spoke to us last Wednesday night. He's the dermatologist from Toronto, and he was so willing to attend when Annette asked him to come. Now, once again, we can be proud that we are a leader. And if this is passed by council this evening, we will be the first municipality in Ontario to create this leadership legislation, banning the use of suntan parlors for use by those under 18. And in my closing remarks, Your Worship, I would like to read an email that I received from Dr. Sam Hanna, the dermatologist that spoke to us last Wednesday evening. And here's the email that he sent me. "It was a pleasure to meet with you tonight. Oakville really made history tonight in leading what are sure to be similar changes across the province. This is what will make the Ministry of Health sit up and take action." And thank you for your time, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you for nicely staying in your 5 minutes. Councillor Demoff.
Thank you for indulging me as well. As Councillor Robinson has said many times, we're leaders here in Oakville. And tonight we can become the first municipality in Ontario to restrict tanning bed use for those under 18. I said at ASC last week, I hope this is a very short-lived bylaw, and nothing would make me happier than if this bylaw was taken off our books and the province took this over to restrict tanning bed use. But until the province doesn't step in, I'm proud to live in a community that isn't afraid to take a stand to protect young people. I'm also very proud to be part of a council that will make history when we pass this bylaw. To Ralph and Annette and Joan, and all the others who've worked tirelessly on this issue, my most sincere thanks. Annette, you had said before about doing better when we know better, and tonight Oakville will do better. Thank you.
Oh, let's see, Councillor Lapworth, then Councillor Adams, and then Councillor Khan.
Actually, I just have a point of information. We might be doing things a little bit backwards today, but I did ask for a recorded vote on this matter.
Oh, well, actually, you know what? We should have separated it in order to do that. So, as it happens, you can ask for a recorded vote at any time, even after you voted. So, by the same logic, we'll let you separate it afterwards, since in order to have it, you couldn't without separating. So, we'll consider that the item hasn't passed yet. So, you're all going to get your wish. Councillor Lapworth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to share a personal experience with the folks that have spoken tonight and my fellow councillors, and you too, Mr. Mayor. As a teenager, I suffered badly with psoriasis. A fair part of my body was embedded with psoriasis, and I took creams, ointments, and various types of treatment in Britain while I was living there. And it wasn't until 1971 that I took a 2-week vacation on the Costa del Sol in Spain. And after 4 days of sunlight and salt water, all of my psoriasis disappeared. Okay, and it didn't come back for 5 or 6 years, by which time I had relocated here to Canada. And I went to see my local doctor to see if there was a solution. And he said, well, you know, I do not recommend tanning beds. I tried other solutions. But again, it was salt water and sun and fresh air that cured it again, and it's curing it today. Thank you.
Who did I say was next? Councillor Adams?
Could I just ask our staff to comment on the medical and therapeutic use issue? The definition. I think it was intended to be asked, and we never got the answer.
I reviewed the bylaw. As it's written, there's no exemption for medical prescription in what is before you.
And hence, we're asking our council if
So
they could. If we want to understand from our council if there is any, what's the implication on those who might have a doctor's note?
Well, it's plain that it's forbidden, but Mr. Carr?
I agree with Your Worship and with Councillor Khan's interpretation. The bylaw as written does not provide for an exemption for children coming in with a doctor's note. The exemption applies to certain kinds of.
It allows for certain types of equipment, is that what you said?
Yeah, there's an exemption for equipment, and Councillor Khan, I think, was correct in highlighting the word solely. So if it is a particular piece of equipment that's used solely for therapeutic purposes, then it's exempt from the bylaw.
And so if there's I'll call it a mixed use, one that is sometimes used for aesthetic or cosmetic use, and at other times used for a medical use, that's not allowed?
That's right, you're still caught by the bylaw. So in plain language, if a child comes in with a doctor's note to a beauty salon, a tanning salon, I have a doctor's note to use a tanning facility, the bylaw would still apply since that child cannot use that.
And if council was of a mind to allow that particular case, would it be appropriate to include a additional phrase within the bylaw? What phrase would be appropriate?
My best advice to council is it's always dangerous to draft bylaws on the fly. So if it were the will of council to incorporate such a revision, I would request an opportunity to take that away and bring it back.
Councillor, in plain parliamentary language, you can amend this later to introduce that option if council agrees, but you basically would need to amend this now or later.
That's right, and so the choice is, if council wishes to do it, are either to refer it back to staff, defer it, or to pass it and ask for an amendment to come forward at a later date.
You should test council's will with an amendment.
That's right.
Of some kind.
So,
and you have the floor.
So I think what council might prefer is to pass it and bring back an appropriate amendment at a later date.
Okay. The onus is still on you to take action of some kind.
I understand that there might be some wording that's available, but I think it would be better to allow the motion to proceed as it is and add an additional item, which is that staff report back on appropriate amendments to allow for medical use.
I think you're assuming something here.
No, but that's what I would prefer to do.
Right.
So that's
Councillor Adams is, as I understand it, wishes to move an amendment.
Thank you. To
add a second bit to the motion that requests staff to come back with a proposed amendment at another time to allow doctor's notes and so on. Is that correct?
Correct.
And okay, now, Councillor Khan, the amendment is not on the floor and not subject to debate until and unless it gets a second. So are you raising your hand to second it? So is there a seconder? Councillors, order. I regret to tell you that there is no support for your amendment. Apparently there is all of a sudden now. Councillor Byrd has decided to second your amendment. So now debate is in order on your amendment. Who is Councillor Khan, were you desiring to debate it? He had his hand up first. I'm just trying to figure out if he's... Then Councillor Khan, Councillor Demoff, and Councillor Dudek.
The way the definition exists already, if an enterprise wants to open up tanning booths strictly for the therapeutic purposes, it already allows for that. We don't need staff to come back with that requirement.
Councillor Demoff.
Given this issue has come up before, we were provided with a study that was done in BC about the medical use of tanning beds. The medical beds that are used are much different than the tanning beds that are found in a tanning salon. And we're not talking about a doctor's note to go and use the commercial tanning beds. Dermatologists or medical professionals have tanning beds that are used solely for medical purposes. So to change anything in this bylaw, I would not support it whatsoever, because we open ourselves up to something completely different for commercial beds to be used. They're not even close to being the same thing.
Councillor Dudek.
Ditto.
Oh, was that a foot race to see who first would say? Oh, okay. Is there other debate or discussion? Councillor Robinson.
Your Worship, I'm compelled to ask council to please support the resolution that's on the table tonight and the bylaw as it's currently worded.
The amendment is on the floor, not the motion.
Well, okay, defeat the amendment then.
All right. Councillor Elgar.
I also will be a ditto. I will not support this amendment being put forward at this time. We're talking phototherapy versus tanning beds. It's totally different things here.
So the best thing we ever did was provide you internet at the desks. Is that right? All right. Other discussion or debate? All right, then I'll put your amendment to a vote, Councillor. All those in favor of the amendment by Councillor Adams and Councillor Byrd, please raise your hands. That one really died. All those against? All right. Okay. Now, I appreciate Councillor Byrd's democratic instinct to assist the councillor to get it on the floor so that the discussion could be had. And you know, we often benefit from discussion. So that's all good. I will now put the main motion, and we'll have a recorded vote. And so to vote in favor, please rise to be recognized. Yes. So, sorry for the housework we're doing here. Councillor Khan, Councillor Adams, Councillor Grant, Councillor Knoll, Councillor Lapworth, Councillor Elgar, Mayor Burton, Councillor Giddings, Councillor Byrd, Councillor Demoff, Councillor Duddock, Councillor Robinson, and Councillor Johnston. Thank you. It is carried. And just for clarity, it's the same mover and seconder as for the main, the previous main motion on the committee report, Madam Clerk. So I believe that brings us now. Councillor Byrd.
I think we've taken things out of order, and I believe we have now approved the Administration and Finance Committee, yet we heard a delegation who was late wanted to discuss something on community services. So I think we have to separate item number 2 on community services, if we could, so to introduce a contrary motion.
Yes, Councillor Byrd, the chair recognizes you. Or Councillor Duddock.
No, actually, Councillor Byrd is going to be.
Councillor Byrd.
Yeah, well, I think we have to make changes to the recommendation from the Community Services Committee of with regards to item number 2, which is the Dunn Street curbing, in recognition of the request of Mr. Rockcliffe.
So we'll use the wording provided by staff that Councillor Duddock referenced earlier, shifting the recommendation from option 4 to option 2.
Option 1.
Option 1, thank
it's written out there, if your worship.
Thank you. That the report entitled Dunn Street Curbing from the Engineering and Construction Department dated July 16, 2012 be received, and 2, that staff implement option 1 identified in the staff report dated July 16, 2012 from the Engineering and Construction Department, with the understanding that staff can work with the abutting property owners in an effort to enhance grading opportunities behind the curb, subject to the satisfaction of the Director of Engineering and Construction. Councillor Duddock.
Your worship, procedurally, we'll vote against the motion that was from CSC in order to have this pass, correct?
You're absolutely correct. So, no. What I thought we would do is we would retroactively separate it, and
We have separated it. It is separated.
and as we did for the other one, and we would dispense with the intermediate step. But I take your point. Now, are we satisfied as to who the mover and seconder are here? Councillor Byrd and Councillor Giddings. And here, Madam Clerk, is the text. So I'll put the vote. All those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? That motion carries. So now we've dispatched, in a slightly hopscotch manner, CSC and ASC. Thank you, everybody, for your cooperation and your work.
I mover and seconder for the recommendation of the balance of ASC.
Same one as this one.
Okay, I didn't hear them together.
Yeah. So, if I could, we'll perhaps in the interest of order, would you like a 5-minute recess, Council? All right, we're recessed for 5 minutes so that the chamber can change seats.
Well, I mean, I think we were caught.
All right, with that, I'll declare the recess over and we'll resume the meeting. And our next order of business is a extra added attraction. The chair recognizes Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's my great pleasure this evening to introduce to you a new, well, I guess I shouldn't say a new, but an old new. That's sort of offensive. Somebody taking a new position within our family of organizations, and that is Charlotte Meisner, who is now the Chief Executive Officer of the Oakville Public Library. And I was going to say on behalf of my colleague Pam DeMoff, but I noticed that she's still talking to her tanning friends. Charlotte Meisner has not been a new face. She's been with the organization for 26 years, starting in 1986 as the business manager for the Oakville Public Library. And from 1986 right up until just recently, she also served as director of corporate affairs. So she was responsible for the finance and administration of the library, and she's always done a tremendous job, which is why the board in 2011, when it found itself in need of a new CEO, offered her the acting position and just recently appointed her as the permanent CEO, or the full-time CEO of the library. We're very pleased to have Charlotte on board, and she's already made big impacts on the library in her little over a year in this in her acting role, and we have great confidence in her abilities going forward to implement some of the interesting programs, and certainly some of the radical changes that are happening in the library sector vis-a-vis technology and changing customer demands. So on behalf of Councillor DeMoff and I, your representatives on the Oakville Public Library Board, our new CEO, Charlotte Meisner.
Welcome, Ms. Meisner. I wonder if you have any remarks you'd like to share with Council.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I'm very excited to be leading the library forward in achieving the board's new strategic plan. Our Love the Experience vision is to provide the best customer experience. This means we need to optimize our literacy and programming, space and content within a very accountable town library framework. We will transform the library service by embracing the future while respecting the past. So I'm really looking forward to that in partnership with Council and senior town staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
All right, Council. That brings us to our only discussion item, and I'll turn to Councillor Knoll again for this. Item 1.
Yes, thank you. Your Worship, I'd like to give you a motion that the following members of Council be appointed to the Development Charges Steering Committee, and those are Councillors Adam, Elgar, Knoll, and I'm looking at his notes, Bird. That's my motion.
Thank you very much. Is there can I have a seconder, please?
Sorry, and Your Worship, Robert.
Yes, and Councillor Lepworth, thank you for seconding that. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is adopted. All right, now we have, that's not the end of the agenda. We have a few things more. So under new business, we have notices of motion, and we have emergency congratulatory and condolence items. And in accordance with section 6 sub 2 of the procedure bylaw, we've received notices of motion to be considered at the next council meeting to be held on September 17th, 2012. The first one is brought to us by Councillor Bird and Councillor Giddings, and that concerns a proposal that Council recommend the name of the new Oakville Hospital, now under construction on Dundas, and that's contained in the agenda. But we also have, or is that the only notice of motion? Yes, okay. So then the other thing that we have in this section of the agenda is I believe that there may be some congratulatory notes, and I'll turn to Councillor Johnston first.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got two, actually. Do you want me to do them one after the other? Okay. Thank you, Mayor Burton. I rise this evening on the heels of the closing ceremonies of the Olympic Games in London. And I think we'll all agree it was an exciting 2 weeks. I just want to take a moment to congratulate all of Canada's Olympic athletes, but especially our Oakville Olympians, for their competitive spirit and a truly inspiring way they conducted themselves at the Games. Oakville has always been an incredibly engaged community. I think it was reflected in our athletes who harnessed the hometown support and flourished on the international stage. And boy, did they succeed. Our athletes have made our town and our country extremely proud. And it is with absolute pleasure watching them compete. Council looks forward to recognising them later this fall. And I believe we're going to have a parade. So, in total, there was 5 Oakville athletes who competed at the Olympic Games. We have Adam Van Couverden, who won silver in the kayak. We had Diana Matheson, who won bronze in football, and it was a great game and well-deserved. It's football in the Olympics. Soccer in North America. Douglas Sima, who won in the men's 8 rowing. And we also had Kyle Jones and Tara Van Bielen, who, although they didn't win medals, did extremely well. Kyle was the highest placed finisher in the triathlon, I believe it was. And Tara just missed out in the final of the swimming, 100 metres. And while we're on it, let's include Mark Aldershaw, because he trains out of the Burrell Oak Canoe Club, and although he lives in Burlington, we trained him. So, so I think we should include him in our parade. I think every athlete would tell you that their Olympic journey began very close to home. It began with our local sports clubs and Oakville's world-class facilities that this council continues to add to. And in doing so, we've helped our athletes to be recognised and to nurture their talent from a very young age. So on behalf of all of council, I believe, I just want to extend congratulations to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And did you have a second item, or was that it? We'll take you. Oh, look at that. You get applause.
Following up in the Olympic spirit, Bronte BIA is holding Harbour Days this week. It began last week, and as part of the celebrations, they had a corporate sand sculpture challenge, and the Olympics was the theme. And I'm pleased to report that a council team of myself, Councillor Duddock and Councillor Demoff, won first place and won the golden bucket. So there you go, guys. We will be defending next year, and I'd just like to tell everyone to come on down to Bronte. There's lots going on, and thanks to all the teams that competed against us.
Thank you, Councillor, and I'll tell the media that the 3 councillors will be available for a photo op after the meeting with their bucket. Councillor Elgar.
Yeah, I'm very interested in seeing what the headline will be in the local papers soon to follow after Councillor Johnston has told us about this winning trio.
Well, perhaps sandcastles will become a summer Olympic sport. I too would like to offer some congratulations to the Downtown Oakville BIA on their successful 20th anniversary jazz festival, which has just concluded yesterday. And I want to thank them for their eager interest in the Olympic parade that I'm organizing to honor our Olympians. I first broached this Thursday night at the kickoff dinner for the Jazz Festival with the merchants and sponsors of the Jazz Festival, and I was blown away by the eager interest they all expressed to be involved and participate and make a contribution. I believe that the entire, based on the feedback I've had since Thursday, I believe that the entire town has caught the fever for a parade. And so I've been asked, I was on Canada AM, I was on Global nationally, and I was asked when would the date be, and I was asked which of the athletes would attend. And so I explained to everybody that this is not the first time that Oakville has had Olympic experience. This isn't even the second time that we've had Olympic experience. And so we know from experience that it takes a good long time to fit together a day on which all of our athletes will be available. And this is the kind of town that holds out for that day so that they can all be there. I will predict, but don't hold me to it, that it'll be Saturday, October 13th. That's about the amount of time that it takes. We had a 13 theme going tonight, didn't we? But no, this is a lucky Saturday the 13th, so no problem there. And to the question I kept getting as to which of the athletes, the answer is all. That's the whole point of taking the time to get a date when they will all be here. And when I say all, it's the Oakville way to celebrate not just the Olympic medalists, but all Olympians, past, present, and future. It is, after all, the minor sports clubs of our town that grow these athletes, and I am sure that everyone will be eager to participate. So watch for further news, and may I say that my call for volunteers to assist with the parade has been wonderfully answered with many, and there's room for more, nevertheless. You don't know until you talk to me. We may find a way that, don't assume there's no way that everybody has already looked after it. My message to the town is everyone will probably have a wonderful way to contribute. So far, that's certainly been the case. So don't anybody be shy. Please contact my office or email me at oakvillemayor@gmail.com. And so with that, I'll turn to Councillor DeMoff.
I had a congratulations as well, if that's okay.
Yes, it's the spirit and the time.
Well, yes, it's another athletic achievement, but Councillor Duddick and I would like to congratulate our Ward 2 resident Mandu Nagaraja, who on July the 29th was the 50th person to swim across Lake Ontario. So we would like to extend Council's congratulations to him.
Thank you very much. And as I recall, in record time. And if you saw his picture, he's one strong-looking man. All right. That brings us to regional reports and question period regarding town boards and advisory committees. Are there any items? Councillor Knoll?
After a long absence of the monthly library report, I'm pleased to present, and it'll be Councillor DeMoff's turn next month, to present a report on behalf of the Oakville Public Library Board of what's happening at your library. So here we go. The library is working hard on the implementation of its Love the Experience strategic plan, which you heard from the new CEO, Charlotte Meisner, earlier. To improve digital literacy skills, the library is expanding its extremely popular, to get my glasses here, Book a Tech Coach program to the Woodside branch beginning in September, offering LeapPads, children's tablets for checkout by the public in late August, and integrating the use of iPads into many of its children's programs, which all of these programs proves the point that the library is truly becoming or evolving to become relevant, or more relevant as technology changes and consumer demands for different methods of delivery of materials are in demand. As part of fulfilling the key objective of improving customer convenience, the library is improving access to early childhood literacy programs in both Clearview and the Palermo neighborhoods. In Clearview, the library has partnered with the Region of Halton and YMCA to provide a Kids and Me program for preschoolers and their caregivers out of the Clearview Christian Reformed Church. In Palermo, a neighborhood full of young families, and a few I understand, Councillors Elgar and Lapworth, if I know my demographics correctly, the library has partnered with the YMCA and the Oakville Parent-Child Center to provide an outdoor weekly drop-in in front of Palermo Public School this summer. So that is your library report for this month. I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can, and I'll hand the mantle over to Councillor DeMoff to do next month's report.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Any questions for the councillor? Thank you very much, then. We have a busy schedule of requests for reports. I guess the first one I'll bring to you, I believe they've been distributed to you on your desks. So I'll take them in this order and read it for the public's benefit. First one is moved by Councillor Grant, seconded by Councillor Knoll, and it reads that staff be requested to provide a report on the recently implemented active transportation facilities along River Oaks Boulevard East, including a review of the resultant parking prohibitions. And that's the request for report. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll just bring the vote to that. All those in favor of the request? Opposed, if any? That request is approved. Then we have two from Councillor Robinson and Councillor Johnston, moving and seconding. The first is Oakville's Canada Geese program, and it reads that staff be requested to undertake a review of Oakville's Canada Geese program and investigate other potential control measures and options, including discussions with other municipalities and regulatory agencies to lessen the impact of Canada geese on Oakville's waterfront parks, and report back by the end of the second quarter 2013. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That carries. The next one is the Emerald Ash Tree Borer Private Property Refund request for report. That as a result of our current EAB treatment policy, a number of property owners are requesting that private property owners be offered a rebate if they treat their own ash trees. Staff be requested to prepare a report for the current budget committee with options to refund owners for treatment or prevention of the emerald ash borer beetle. Is there discussion? Councillor Giddings.
If it's all right with Councillor Robinson, if we could ask staff to include a cost benefit of treatment versus removal and replanting.
It's fine. We want to get as much information on this request as we can.
Just catching up on that. Councillor Elgar.
Yes, thank you. Through you to Councillor Robinson and Councillor Johnston. I'm just wondering whether we should, when we're asking for this, before we give the impression that we're going to be doing it, if we could get a report back on what the cost could be and the impact on the tax budget for 2013. Would that be in order, if we could word it that way, Councillor?
Well, some citizens and myself met with Chris Mark and John McNeil, and it was actually their recommendation that we go one way or the other, either go to council requesting a report on the cost, or go to council requesting the council submit a report to the budget committee. So we took the latter. That this asks that it go to the budget committee, the report.
I guess I just need a little clarity on what the dollar value might be. Like, would we top it out at $100,000 or
But that would be included if it went to the budget committee.
That would all be in as to here's what the impact would be.
And that was if we were going to do this, that was the recommendation from the budget chair, that it go directly to his committee with the report, which would surely mention the cost. That would be part of it.
Okay, that was because it says here options to refund owners. It doesn't say about what the potential cost could be, whether it's a 1% impact, 2%, 3%. Like, I'm just trying to get a feel for it.
All costs will be included in the report.
Okay, well, that sounds good. This is a pretty interesting one, and I think it's everybody is quite interested right now. The concern is also about the cost of what it costs people to do the treatment. Because we do something there also that it would be kind of that the residents would know the ballpark cost to treat a tree, so that there is no gouging by any company.
Well, that could be all part of the report that comes back. You can put anything you want in here to our staff to get them to add it into the budget committee report. Doesn't matter to Alan or I.
Mayor?
Yeah, I would move, if we could put that in also, so they know whether it's going to cost 100, 500, or 1,000.
In discussion with Mr. Mark, we've covered all these bases. It will be a fulsome report, if that's the word, and cover all bases regarding costs to plant, treat, remove.
Okay, I'm fine with that as long as you've got, it has everything. That's great. Thank you.
They're all nodding their head.
I just want
Agreement or disagreement?
Oh, in agreement.
Council, I just want to be careful here that we're not raising a false expectation that there's going to be in this report any disclosure of information that can't be made public from the bids that the town has conducted with people to treat town trees. I know there's been some anxiety by some members of council to try to publicize that which can't be publicized. So let's just be clear that.
Your Worship, these people that met with us a couple of weeks ago asked that question. Mr. Marks said, no way, can't have it.
I understand. I'm just listening to the discussion tonight.
Yeah.
And just in case anybody was thinking we were going to go there, I wanted to remind council that we've had legal advice that we can't go there. So I just hate to have expectations that aren't met, because then when we get there, if nobody said anything, people might not be as happy. So just wanted to put that in there. So any other discussion or changes suggested for this? All those in favor then? Opposed, if any? That request is approved. And now we have a council, for the benefit of the public, let me explain that we had a recent event in Ward 4, which would be Councillors Elgar and Councillor Lapworth, in which a resident had an unpleasant, I'll call it, encounter with a member of the tow truck industry. And so a request for report has been suggested by Councillor Bird, and he has a vast amount of experience to draw on in this area. And but he's brought it forward without a name mover or seconder, and we can work that out after I read it. In any event, the request for report reads that staff be directed to prepare a report regarding the options available to deal with licensing and regulating the tow truck industry in Oakville. And I need to see at least two hands to move and second that. Councillor Elgar and Councillor Lapworth, thank you for that. And the councillors, thank you, Councillor Bird, for your leadership on it. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that report is also approved. So now, that takes us almost to the end. We now need a mover and seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws. Councillor Johnston and Councillor Grant, thank you so much for that. This is approval for bylaws, all of them 2012, of course, number 47, 62, 63, 69, and Councillor Bird.
Just, I want to know in 62, I note that my street is specifically mentioned on there, but I believe that it's in general with anyone, all the other streets are quite a number of them, so although there is an interest, I don't believe there's a conflict of interest, but I'd let the record know that I did. I don't want to spend that a lot. Everybody else is going to go through and try to find out if their street is on there or they know someone, but
No,
there's an awful lot of streets identified.
The law is actually quite clear that in a matter of general interest, you don't have a pecuniary interest, and there's no harm or foul in you voting for that, and that would be true of each of you. So also bylaw 63, 69, 72, 74, 75, 76, and 78 as recorded in tonight's agenda. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? The bylaws are adopted. Thank you for your time and attention. It's been great working with you tonight, and we are adjourned.